And I'm looking at the death certificate, and the person who died signed the deed after they died. Well, how'd that happen?
Gotham investigations. Title fraud, one of the fastest growing crimes in the United States. We have here a professional attorney that you need to have if you are buying a house, and that is Natalie Seguri. And she is going to talk to you about how to protect yourself. Natalie, welcome. And tell us, why is this such a fast-growing crime?
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me and for that introduction. It's a fast-growing crime. It's targeting, the average homeowner. You own a vacant lot. Why is it happening? Things are digital. We live in a digital age, and showing up in person is happening less and less. Recording deeds in person, less and less. Things are done online, and it leaves a gap and a space for people to produce fraudulent deeds.
What cases have you had yourself where people come to you and they suspect fraud?
Unfortunately, we've had a couple of incidences where we are the closing agent on a transaction. We receive a contract that seems to and appears to be executed by a buyer and a seller. Typically, those are incidences where the property is for a vacant land. And the reason it happens a lot with vacant lands is because they're unencumbered. It's very rare, if not impossible, for you to see a mortgage on a vacant lot. And so when there's no mortgage, it's one less hurdle that a fraudster has to get through in order to close, because no one has to contact the mortgage company. You don't need the social security number for the borrower because there is no borrower. But we've had incidences, we've gotten all the way up to preparing to close, like at the closing table, all the due diligence done. And when we start to try to coordinate an in-person signing, all of a sudden, like, the communication starts to lag, or we're getting the runaround. Can you send a notary or send me the docs? I'll get it notarized by myself. Huge red flag. So if you're purchasing a property, you should be keenly and intimately aware of how the closing agent is setting up the closing for the seller, especially if you're purchasing something like a vacant lot, because you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you're purchasing something that doesn't belong to the seller.
So many times people just go into these real estate deals trusting their realtor, or not even their realtor anymore, because you got Zillow, you got all these things online, and they just go into these transactions. Why is it so important to have an attorney like yourself that represents them on a real estate deal?
So because we've had the experience, we also undergo a lot of training, our title insurance underwriters, because this is becoming more prevalent, and especially in Miami-Dade County. We are on high alert for these things. We know to be extra cautious when it comes to determining whether the seller is real. I mean, I've come across dead people that have signed deeds. And I'm like, wait a second, can you get me the death certificate for this person who passed away? So apparently that's how you inherited this property. And then I'm looking at the death certificate, and the person who died signed the deed after they died. Well, how'd that happen? So having a keen eye, being hyper aware, and just really diligent and vigilant. It's what it comes down to. I mean, our title company counterparts that are non-attorneys, maybe they're not keeping as close of an eye on things. But across the industry, if you're a real estate professional, it's something that you need to be hyper aware of.
What's your due diligence consist of during a transaction?
So one of the first steps that we take is obtaining a copy of the seller's driver's license. Now, what this does is at least says, okay, they have a driver's license, they have a passport, and they can scan it to us on a moment's notice. Now, ultimately, until we get it in person and until I can touch it and feel it and check that it's authentic and real, you run into, there's the gap. And in that gap, we operate under good faith, but nothing actually will finalize in a transaction until we're able to substantiate that this person is real and they've either come in, or we send a third-party notary company that we do a lot of business with, that we trust, that is also takes the time to vet. They are well trained in being able to spot these types of issues so that they can in person, identify whether this is fraud or not. Ultimately, no matter what the precautions are, things happen. And fraudsters are getting really good. Fake IDs look real. AI is unparalleled, like how good it is, right? I've never seen it the way that it is now. I mean, people are getting on Zoom calls to say, I am Jane Smith. Here is my driver's license. And it's a bot. It's an AI generated figure that looks like the person in the ID. And if you are not aware of how to ask curveball questions that maybe a bot wouldn't be anticipating, or, hey, what time is it right now? Or what color shirt am I wearing? Something that maybe an AI generated figure wouldn't be able to detect or spot. You have to be trained to know these types of things.
So I have some signs where maybe title theft is occurring, or they're stealing the information, because you could just go online and see who owns the property. Now you can apply for loans, take out a second mortgage even. This is very scary. Yes, write a police report, but the reality is it's just going to get filed and go in a pile of thousands of other reports. What steps should a person take where now you have realtors calling your phone about your location that's for sale? Oh, that could be a sign. Should they contact you, or what do they do in that situation after they file a police report, or they see documents coming in that they're not paying on a loan, and they're like, what loan? Besides, getting all 3 credit reports to see what's going on. What would they do in this situation?
Absolutely. I mean, calling a real estate attorney, calling our office to help pull a title search. So let's even take it a step back. So who is this happening to? It's happening to vacant landowners. It's happening to elderly. And then how does it happen? I mean, obviously it can happen to the average Joe, the run-of-the-mill homeowner too. But these are the people that are in the classes of people that are highly targeted. So vacant lands and elderly. Or vacation home owners, absentee owners. So if you don't live at the property and it's a second home or a vacation home that's unoccupied, people spot these types of things and they start watching the property and go, oh, no one's been by here. No one's pulling in and out. It's been months. It's been a year. No one stopped by. So absentee owners, elder, vacant land. That's who's being targeted primarily. How does it happen? The only way that you're going to change ownership is through a deed. Well, a deed needs to be signed. In the state of Florida, it needs to be witnessed by 2 people and be notarized. So there's multiple ways that they can forge this. They can either be impersonating the seller, owner, and say, I am the owner, and they go with their really good fake ID and they con a notary into believing that's who they are, and then the notary signs off on it. Or it could be that the whole thing is fraud, and because you can digitally scan and record deeds these days, in most counties in Florida, people are copy and pasting and transposing notary stamps and seals, forging notary signatures, and then of course also forging the owner's signature. And the why. Why are people doing this? Well, now they own your property, supposedly, by forgery, and if you're an elderly person, or it's a vacant land, or you're an absentee owner and you're not visiting the property, how would you be the wiser? What are they going to do with it? They want to make money. So they're either going to mortgage it, and you're going to start getting foreclosure notices on your property. They're going to try to sell it, and then all of a sudden your tax bill doesn't show up this year, and that's because the owner of record changed, so the tax bill's going to the new guy. So these are some of the signs that you'll see, and how you'll arrive at identifying that you're a victim of title theft. And then ultimately you call an attorney who will, what I would do is I'd first pull a title search, check property appraisers, see the last deed of record. And then the burden of proof is unfortunately on the victim. They have to prove that this was obtained through fraud. They have to bring you in so that you can trace back who did it, how they did it. And in scenarios where we've seen fraudulent deeds be recorded, the dead guy who signed his deed, the first person I call is the notary. And I'm like, listen, I'm not the police. I'm not here. I'm not the judge and jury, but we got to undo this. So who signed it? And, people real quick to cooperate.
Now, is there more protection, less protection, or is it pretty much the same, having your house under like an LLC or corporation, or a property under an LLC or corporation rather than a person?
Arguably, you'd think it would be more protection because you have this entity. However, the way these entities work, at least in Florida, yes, Sunbiz is something that you can rely on as far as seeing who the managers are. But I think it's a little bit more risky to have it under an entity, because at the end of the day, as a title professional, what I'm relying on is the operating agreement. My due diligence is provide me an operating agreement for the entity to see who has the authority to bind the entity. And that can be furnished on LegalZoom.com for $5. So someone can create their own operating agreement, list themselves as the manager, and obviously when there's conflict between what an operating agreement says and what Sunbiz says, we go the extra step to ensure how did the membership interest transfer, did it actually transfer, and we dig a little deeper. But hypothetically speaking, I don't think it really adds much protection. I think the best thing you could do is create a trust, because most fraudsters are not going to pay an attorney to draft and create a trust.
What about like LLCs or corporations that are not from like Miami or Dade County? They're from another state where you can't see who the owners are of that?
In that instance, to a degree, yes, you'd still want to register in the state of Florida as at least a foreign entity. You have to do that if you're owning real property in Florida. You can own it under a different state, but you do need to register in the state as a foreign entity. And let's take Delaware, for example, where it's we pay a fee and we can figure out who the beneficial owners are. It, in a sense, would add a layer of protection. But if a fraudster, at least a sophisticated one, was going to try to use that entity to do that, all then they would have to do is impersonate that beneficial owner. So it's tough because you really have to be able to sniff it out. I do have a cool pro tip that I would offer to people who are going to own either vacant lands, unencumbered property, and that would be to record a notice on your own property. Cloud your own title, because you're the one who's going to be able to remove the cloud. And that cloud is, we're going to record a notice that this is an unencumbered land, and that if anybody who is looking to purchase this property and pulls a title search, they must contact such and such attorney.
Well, that's great information. And it's horrifying to think that somebody could work all their life, purchase a property, and then that property is taken away from them. And you, as a victim, should show the burden of proof. Now, there's always a saying that I would hear, that there's no room for beauty in the legal system. I'm glad you killed that rumor and put it behind you. But Natalie Zaguri, please give us your information, because if I'm buying a property, you're who I'm going with. If I have a friend buying a property, there is no doubt that your knowledge, your determination, your skills, and your referrals that come from many people out there in the field, and especially that I refer to you on investigations I have during real estate, and the expert witness that you provide in such a case is sensational. Please give your contact information, and hopefully I can buy another property soon, and you'll be the first one I call.
We'll get you closed and funded. I'm Natalie Zaguri, your real estate attorney. We practice throughout the state of Florida, and you can find me on Instagram at Natalie Zaguri Scott or at Zaguri Scott PA.
What is your contact number or email address?
Oh, yeah. And via phone at 305-428-3823, 305-428-3823. And you can email me anytime, and my team will get on it within a minute. We are so quick, and we live on our emails. It's Natalie, Natalie, at ZaguriScottPA.com. Thank you so much. This was great.